Jaya Nilo Premadhana Karuna Pracho Jaya Nilo Premadhana Jaya Nila Premadhana Karuna Pracho Prabhu Kotha Gala Acharya Thakur Kahamara Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan Kaha Dasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan Kahamara Bhatta Juga Kaha Kobira Ika Kale Kotha Gala Korana Tora Pasane Kutivo Matha Onale Prasivo Pasan Gauranga Gunera Nidhi Kotha Gale Pavo Sisaba Sangira Sange Yekaila Bila Sisangana Paya Kadena Ratamoda Sisangana Paya Kadena Ratamoda Jayanila Premadana Karuna Pracho Jayanila Ana Prabhu Kotha Gala Acharya Thakur Ana Prabhu Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare. Jaya Vaishnava Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur, Vaishnava Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur. Ishwar Puripad Thakur ki jai.
Bhakti Chad, would you like to read the translation, please?
Hare Krishna. He who brought the treasure of divine love. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, whereas such personality is Srinivas Acharya Gan. Where are my Swarup Dharmadhara and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishna Das Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against a rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees, in whose association he has performed his pastimes, Narottama Das simply weeps.
Thank you so much. So today is the disappearance day of Sri Ishvara Puri. So I'll read a little bit about this wonderful personality. Receiving the seed of Krishna Prema from Madhavendra Puri, Sri Ishvara Puri became the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Madhavendra Puri couldn't move at the end of his life. So doing all humble services, Ishvara Puri even cleaned up his stool and urine. Ishvara Puri helped his guru to remember Sri Krishna by always chanting Hare Krishna and telling Radha Krishna's pastimes. Pleasing Madhavendra Puri by these menial acts, Ishvara Puri received the treasure of Krishna Prema from his spiritual master. Sri Ishvara Puri again showed exemplary humility, the ornament of a true Vaishnava, when he first met Sri Advaita Acharya. Finding Advaita Prabhu busy serving his deity, Ishvara Puri sat down patiently and shyly. Although he was a Vaishnava sannyasi, Ishvara Puri introduced himself with, "I am a Shudra of the lowest class." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the guru for the whole universe, honored Ishvara Puri by taking initiation from him. One day, Ishvara Puri came to Lord Chaitanya's house. The Lord personally cooked and lovingly served his spiritual master. After prasadam, Lord Chaitanya rubbed sandalwood paste on Ishvara Puri and offered a fragrant flower garland. By his own example, Sri Chaitanya showed how to properly worship and serve the Guru Parampara. Once while passing through Sri Ishvarapuri's birthplace, Lord Gauranga became filled with rapture. Taking some dust, the Lord said, "This dust is my life and soul." His samadhi stands in the 64 samadhis area. Sri Ishvarapuri ki jai. An interesting note, in the CC Adi Leela, Ishvarapuri was the one that told Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "You are a fool." He said, "You are not qualified to study Vedanta philosophy, and therefore you must always chant the holy name of Krishna. This is the essence of all mantras or Vedic hymns." I think so. So we'll read from Bhagavatam now. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 11, Text 23. Purusho Rama Charitam Shavanar Upadarayan Anrishamya Paro Rajan Karma Bandar Vimuchate Purusho Rama Charitam Shavanar Upadarayan Anri Shamya Paro Rajan Karma Bandar Vimukchate Purusho Rama Charitam Shavanar Upadarayan Anri Shamya Paro Rajan Karma Bandar Vimuchate Purusho Rama Charitam Shavanar Upadarayan Anri Shamya Paro Rajan Karma Bandar Vimuchate Rama Charitam Aditya Prabhu. Dave. Purusho Rama Charitam karma bandhari muchyate. Anyone online would like to chant the verse? Purushaha, any person. Ramacharitam, the narration concerning the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ramachandra. Shravanai, by oral reception. Upadarayan, simply by this process of hearing. Anrishamsya paraha, becomes completely free from envy. Rajan, O King Parikshit. Karma bandai, by the bondage of fruit of activities. Vimuchyate, one becomes liberated. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O King Parikshit, anyone who orally receives the narrations concerning the characteristics of Lord Ramachandra's pastimes will ultimately be freed from the disease of envy and thus be liberated from the bondage of fruitive activities. Purport. Here in this material world, everyone is envious of someone else. Even in religious life, it is sometimes found that if one devotee has advanced in spiritual activities, other devotees are envious of him. Such envious devotees are not completely freed from the bondage of birth and death. As long as one is not completely free from the cause of birth and death, one cannot enter the Sanatan Dham, or the eternal pastimes of the Lord. One becomes envious because of being influenced by the designations of the body. But the liberated devotee has nothing to do with the body, and therefore he is completely on the transcendental platform. A devotee is never envious of anyone, even his enemy, because the devotee knows that the Lord is his supreme protector. He thinks, what harm can the so-called enemy do? Thus a devotee is confident about his protection. The Lord says, Ye yuta ma prapadyante tam sataiva bhajam yaham. According to the proportion of one's surrender unto me, I respond accordingly. A devotee must therefore be completely free from envy, especially of other devotees. To envy other devotees is a great offense, a Vaishnava aparad. A devotee who constantly engages in hearing and chanting Shravanam Kirtana is certainly freed from the disease of envy, and thus he becomes eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamsha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpite Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusita Devi Pranamami Hare Pri Vancha Kalpatri Vishcha Kripasanabi Evacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good morning, dear devotees. So Srila Prabhupada says that our material disease is envy. And the beginning or the start of our downfall is when we became envious of Krishna. And for whatever stupid reason, we were envious. And our desire to enjoy without Krishna grew and grew. And then we eventually became a disturbance in Krishna's pastimes. And Srila Prabhupada, he said, we forced Krishna to allow us to come down to the material world. The material world has a mantra, which is people spend money that they don't have to buy things they don't need to impress people they don't like. So this is one of the definitions of envy, to make others envy, and then we ourselves become envious of other people's possessions, temporary possessions. And one of the pastimes that stand out to me regarding envy is the story of King Chitraketu. King Chitraketu was one personality who had everything materially. He had a whole kingdom. He was the king. He had many beautiful wives. He himself was 10 million. 10 million wives. So he had everything. He had a very powerful army. He was youthful. He was highly educated. He had opulence and wealth. Nowadays, people think having a little bit of paper money and a little gold is opulence. But the king, he actually had real opulence. He had wealth. But yet, despite having these things, he was in anxiety and he was dissatisfied. It's described that as a person who is aggrieved by hunger and thirst, is not pleased by the external gratification of flower, garlands, or sandalwood pulp. So this king, he was not pleased with his empire, opulence, or possessions. Does anyone know the reason why he was in anxiety, besides Dravida Prabhu? Does anyone know? He didn't have a son. He didn't have any children. And it's described that by chance all of his wives were barren, but he was able to produce, but his wives were barren. It's described that there are 3 debts that we owe. One is to the demigods. They provide the basic needs of life. So one owes the performance of sacrifice. Another one is a debt to our parents, from whom one inherits the good karma and cultural heritage of one's family. We can repay this by offspring, producing offsprings. And the third one is to the sages, who teach how to fulfill the spiritual potential of human life. And one owes by studying the Vedas. So the king, we discussed before, a king has an obligation to his kingdom to produce a son to carry on the next legacy, the dynasty. So this king, Chitraketu, he was very much in anxiety. And this reminds me of a story. There was once, young boys, by nature, they're naughty. They're very mischievous. So there was one boy, he wanted to play a trick on his school. So he waited till the end of the school, and he brought 3 sheep into the school. And what he did was he numbered them 1, 2, and 4. And so he let them loose on the campus, and he went home, expecting to see the fun the next day. When he went to school, everyone was panicking. Where is sheep number 3? They found sheep 1, sheep 2, and then they found the sheep that was numbered 4. So they were searching everywhere. Where is sheep number 3? So this represents, although all of us may have a lot of things that is needed for us to be happy, we're always searching for that one thing that is missing in life. So this king, he had everything, but he was unhappy because he had no son. And Angira Rishi, he approached this king, and he first inquired about the welfare of the citizens, his wives, his secretaries, and his ministers. He asked them, are they under your control? So King Chitraketu Like I mentioned, he had 10 million wives, but he was not able to produce a child from any of them. Another instruction that we should note carefully is that when Angira Rishi, he said, when I first came to your home, I could have given you the supreme transcendental knowledge. But when I saw that your mind was absorbed in material things, I gave you only a son who caused you jubilation and lamentation. So for us, for those that are preachers, we should understand the mind of the person we're speaking to. We cannot give them transcendental knowledge when they're not ready for it. Angira Rishi, he knew that the king, he wasn't ready to hear the supreme knowledge. So he fulfilled his material desire, which was to have a son. And so the king asked Angira Rishi for help. And Angira Rishi, being very kind, he performed a sacrifice. And he told the king, give this to your first wife. And then she was able to produce a child. And naturally, they began raising the child. And then he slowly lost interest in his other wives, in his other queens. So the queens, they became envious of this queen. Does anyone know what these queens did? Yeah. Besides Dravida Prabhu? Huh? They poisoned the child. So this is one of the effects of envy. It takes away our higher intelligence, and we do very crazy things. So the queens, they administered poison to this child. And when the maidservant went to see the child, he noticed that the child was lifeless and that the child's eyes were rolled back. So she could understand that the child was dead. And when King Chitraketu and his wife understood this, it's described that the king almost went blind because of the grief that he was going through. And eventually, Angira Rishi and Narada Muni, they came back to the king when the king was almost about to die out of separation from his dead son. The great saints, Angira and Narada, explained that the relationship between father and son is not factual. It is simply a representation of the illusory energy. The relationship did not exist before, nor will it stay in the future. By the arrangement of time, the relationship exists only in the present. One should not lament for temporary relationships. And the sage, they presented who they were and instructed that all sufferings are due to the bodily conception of life. When one understands his spiritual identity and surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Spiritual Person, one becomes actually happy. When one searches for happiness in matter, one must certainly lament for bodily relationships. So Narada Muni, he brought the living entity back to the dead body. Does anyone know what the Jiva said? Yes, Dravida Prabhu?
Who was my father after all? I've had so many fathers and mothers previously. So I'm not really, it's just a bodily relationship, again.
Narada Muni told him, please wake up. Your parents and relatives are overwhelmed with grief because of your untimely passing away. And then the living entity, he said, according to the results of fruitive activities, I, the living being, transmigrate from one body to another, sometimes going to the species of the demigods, sometimes to the species of lower animals, sometimes among the vegetables, and sometimes to the human species. Therefore, in which birth were these my mother and father. And then when the king and the queens all heard this, they became very sober. And then they gave up their lamentation and their affection for the dead child. So one of the worst type of envy is towards a devotee. It's described that among many millions of living entities, the number of human beings is extremely small. And among human beings who are actually religious, only some are eager to be liberated from material existence. Among many thousands of people who desire relief from material existence, one is freed from the association of unwanted persons and is relieved of material contamination. And among many millions of such liberated persons, one may become a devotee of Lord Narayan. Therefore, such devotees are extremely rare. So we should understand the position of a devotee. And what is a devotee? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, anyone who helps others remember Krishna is a Vaishnava, devotee. And the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, one becomes envious because of being influenced by the designations of the body. So when one misidentifies the real spiritual identity with the body, this is the cause of envy. Yudhishthira Maharaj, he did not see anyone as his enemy, although many envious persons saw him as an enemy. You know, we hear many stories of the early movement of the Hare Krishna movement. You know, many people were just causing so much trouble for the devotees. And they were simply just chanting and trying to distribute literatures to them. I was distributing books at Balboa Park, and this young man came to my table, and he started harassing me, actually. He said, you shouldn't distribute these books. These are books of the devil. He started speaking like that, you know. So I just tolerated it, and then he eventually went away. A few hours later, I see the same person being handcuffed by the police. This is a true story, you know. And I was thinking how it's described that Krishna, he may excuse you from aparad or offenses to him, but he doesn't excuse devotee aparad, Vaishnava aparad to his devotees. So out of all kinds of offenses, Vaishnava aparad is the most dangerous. The most dangerous. He says that Vaishnava aparad is not excused by Vishnu. And one of the great examples is Ambarish Maharaj. Durvasa Muni, he was a great yogi, he was very powerful. In the same body, he was able to travel to Brahma Loka, Shiva Loka, and eventually to Vaikuntha. And when he asked to be forgiven by Lord Vishnu said, I can't do anything. You have to approach that devotee that you offended and ask pardon from him. So Vaishnava aparad is very serious. We should take it to be one of the greatest offenses. And one of the other pastimes that remind me of Vaishnava aparad, knowingly or unknowingly, is from the 6th canto, the pastime of Ajamil. Ajamil, he was trained by his parents to become a perfect Brahmana by studying the Vedas and following the regulative principles. But due to his past, this youthful Brahmana was somehow attracted by a prostitute. And by this association, he became most fallen, and he abandoned all regulative principles. Ajamil begot in the womb of this prostitute 10 sons, the last of whom he named Narayan. And at the time of Ajamil's death, when the order carriers of Yamaraj came to take him, he loudly called the name Narayan in fear, because he was attached to his youngest son. So the Yamadutas, they didn't know that they were committing Vaishnava aparad. They arrested Ajamil, Yamaraj, he warned his servants not to approach Vaishnavas. So the Vaishnav's position is so great. He told them, don't even go near them. They're always protected by the club of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore Lord Brahma and I, and even the time factor, are not competent to chastise them. Just see how much the Lord loves his devotees. And then Yamaraj, he instructed his Yamadutas, who should you bring to me? He said, my dear servants, please bring to me only those sinful persons who do not use their tongues to chant the holy name and qualities of Krishna, whose hearts do not remember the lotus feet of Krishna even once, and whose heads do not bow down even once before Lord Krishna. Send me those who do not perform their duties towards Vishnu, who are the only duties in human life. Please bring me all such fools and rascals. Just by following Srila Prabhupada's examples, offering our obeisances, bowing down, we're freed from this category. And Yamaraj, he was so great that he was begging pardon from the Lord. And he accepted his servants' mistakes as his own. He said, "O my Lord, my servants have surely committed a great offense by arresting a Vaishnav, such as a Jamil. O Narayan, O Supreme and oldest person, please forgive us. Because of our ignorance, we failed to recognize a Jamil as a servant of your Lordship. And thus we have certainly committed a great offense. Therefore, with folded hands, we beg your pardon." And so after hearing from the mouth of their master about the extraordinary glories of the Lord and his name, fame, and attributes, the Yamadutas were struck with wonder. Since then, as soon as they see a devotee, they fear him and dare not look at him again. So these are the Yamadutas. But for us, practicing devotees, for some reason we're not afraid to commit Vaishnava aparad. So there's something wrong in our thinking. And this Vaishnava aparad is compared to the mad elephant. You know, when you want to grow a nice garden, you protect it. But as soon as an elephant enters and tramples, everything is lost. And so one of the ways to get rid of envy is to glorify and to hear about Krishna's pastimes, glorification of his devotees. This is how we can cure the disease of envy. By constantly engaging in hearing and chanting, one becomes freed from the disease of envy, and we're eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. Okay. Is there any questions or comments, reflections? Yes, Bhakti Dave. Welcome back also.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Dear Dave.
It seems to me that the way that Prabhupada uses the term envy extends beyond the conventional English usage of the term. And actually, perhaps it differs a little bit. So I'm wondering if you could define envy as Prabhupada uses it and disambiguate that conception or that definition from the conventional English usage.
Okay. Yeah, Dravida Prabhu, he actually clarifies the word envy the way Srila Prabhupada would use it. So, yeah, please. Because he's, yeah.
Yeah, Prabhupada would often use words based on their usage in England, in Great Britain, because he learned English from the English, not American English. There's a difference. So it's not that the word envy, the way he used it, doesn't also mean being jealous of. He used that. But mostly he used it to mean to bear malice toward, to just feel hatred toward. And it may arise from jealousy or just some other reason, you know. But it's an expanded understanding. I mean, you read Prabhupada's books and you see what is the best meaning that fits this, context. I mean, you see envious. I think you maybe see envious more than envy. Prabhupada would say enviousness, and stuff instead of envy. So just be aware of that as you read. And mostly I found, like in the verses especially, when Krishna is using it, it usually just means this hatred bearing toward others for some reason.
Or wanting to do harm. The example that Dravida Prabhu mentioned is, how can we be envious of an ant, What does an ant have that we want? So the definition is a little different from our standard understanding of envy. But Dravida Prabhu mentioned that Srila Prabhupada, when he mentions envy, means a hatred or malice towards someone else. Yeah.
Hello. You said, like, what does the ant have that we don't, right? That we want. Exactly. Okay, so I'm gonna get somewhere right now. So I go to their meetings, right, and they're always talking about people going to war in the Navy, that they might do something sometime soon, or soldiers, and I just look at them and I tell them, like, you have to, no matter what, you have to talk to the groups you're in, right? Because I don't want nothing coming back towards me too, like, because I go to lots of group meetings and I tell them, you got to think like ants do at times. You know how you see a tree and you see thousands and millions of ants just go for food, and they just go back and stuff, and they use each other like a source of energy. I was like, that's the same way you have to think. So no matter what you guys think outside, you guys have to bring it inside, like a group discussion. So I think ants are actually a source of energy, So I just wanted to let you guys know.
Thank you for your contribution. Bhakti Chad?
So close. Hare Krishna, and welcome back yourself. It was a very nice lecture. So actually, when we went to Southwestern University yesterday to distribute books, and we found sheep number 3. But aside from that, my question is, other than envy, what are things or reasons that compel a devotee to commit Vaishnava aparadhs?
That's a good question. It may also be just if you can specify, what do you mean by Vaishnava aparadh? Like envious of their talents?
Well, it could be some act. I guess malicious or any kind of act that offends a Vaishnava, right?
It doesn't have to be an act. It can be
Or-
mental,
Yeah.
verbal, or physical.
There we go. Thank you. Well,
Yeah, we can perform offenses through our mind. Even physical violence sometimes towards other devotees, I've seen it.
other than being envious of somebody, what are some other reasons maybe that someone would commit a Vaishnava aparadh?
He ate my Mahaprasadam.
It's an aparadh. No, I'm just kidding.
One thing I can think of is just devotees are very tolerant. But sometimes if a person is told over and over and over and over again, sometimes it gets a little difficult to tolerate the other person, And the other person, they should understand what they're doing. And if it displeases other devotees, maybe I should stop doing it. But some devotees, they're very clueless, So then other devotees, they may lose their temper, they may lose their discrimination, So I think communication is always a good idea, to talk to the person explain how you feel, reveal your mind. And also depends on your relationship with the devotee, Yes, Karnamrita Mataji.
I had an experience with a devotee in the temple in Brazil when I used to do Sankirtan. I went to Sankirtan in the Mataji, she was a pujari, and when I came back from Sankirtan, she was doing the Aratik wearing my sari. And I got very angry with her. I said, you don't have to touch my stuff, blah, blah, blah. And she said, oh, I didn't have any clean sari to go to the altar. That's why I grabbed your sari. This is like a good excuse, or this is like, it's right or wrong?
Okay. Well, I'm sure the brahmacharis will have experience of that, Sometimes we see other devotees wearing our shoes, But I think we should see the bigger picture. She needed to do her service. And I'm sure she would have washed it and gave it back to you.
No, she didn't. She just say, oh, you don't want, this is for Krishna, it's not for me. You're supposed to be happy that I'm using to go to the altar with your sari. I say, no, I don't think so. I think you have to have your clean sari to wear, because you're doing this seva every day. So, but I think because she liked the sari. So she was thinking that, oh, she's going to give it to me.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
You took it back.
I think the main offense that you took was that she didn't say that she was sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sure we all experienced that. And like you said, we should think ahead, plan ahead. If we know our services and we're going to be on the altar, we should have one clean set of clothes ready,
Yeah. No? Okay. Thank you, Pro.
Thank you for your... Dave, you had something?
Hold on.
I was just going to generalize from Mataji's question to reflect or contemplate a little bit the difference between a normal and potentially healthy difference of opinion or perspective. Devotees might see the same thing in a different way. What's the difference between that and just sort of normal disagreement or conflict that's part of any social fabric and offense?
Okay.
Sometimes I think you can get a little slippery, where if you disagree with me, you're an offender. And sometimes those disagreements might actually be for the greater good, or it might be something that needs to be deliberated. And I'm just wonder, how we distinguish between normal conflict and offense. If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Well, one thing, they say if you see something wrong and you don't say anything, you're approving it, So when we see the behavior of another devotee, and like I mentioned, it's also what is your relationship with the devotee, If you're equal to them, then you can speak to them, But if they're senior to you, then maybe you should approach someone that's on their level. But we devotees will always have different opinions, One thing I would say is that usually devotees have the proper understanding of the principles, but details are a minor thing, And what is the difference? Maybe I'll think about it, and then we can talk about it during breakfast. Dujamani Prabhu?
I know you're playing. Just on this question, I think the main difference is if you have an intention to help someone, then you can try to make a correction or say something to a devotee. But if your intention is not to help, but to, you're experiencing anger or any malice, as was mentioned earlier, then that's an improper way to correct. That should be tolerated and maybe approached through someone more senior.
It's always the intention, you know. Because devotees love to correct other devotees. Thank you for your time and attention. Please forgive my inability to speak about or glorify Bhagavatam. I'm a little sick from my trip from Mayapur. Hare Krishna. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.